This shouldn't work. A place with steep mountains, unpredictable weather, and barely any flat land should not be making great wine. And yet, it does. And not just decent wine, some of the most distinctive in Italy. And it's been happening here for over 3,000 years. This is a place where everything feels slightly off. The street signs are in two languages, the food feels Austrian, the landscape looks like Switzerland, and somehow you are still in Italy. This is Alto Adige, or Südtirol, depending on who you ask. But here's the question. How does a place like this, with terrain that barely makes any sense for farming, become one of the best wine regions in Italy and the world? And more importantly, how has it been doing this for thousands of years? To understand that, we need to start with something simple: where this place actually is. Alto Adige sits at the very top of Italy, pressed right up against Austria, deep in the Alps. And almost immediately, you notice something unusual. This is not typical wine country. Most wine regions are built on rolling hills. This one isn't. Here, vineyards are carved into steep mountain slopes, sometimes so steep they look closer to hiking trails than farmland. In fact, only about 14% of the land sits below 1,000 meters. The rest? Mountains. And yet, despite all of that, even though Alto Adige produces less than 1% of Italy's total wine, nearly all of it is classified at the highest quality level. 98% of the wine produced here is DOC. That is mind-boggling. And then there's the identity. Most people here don't even speak Italian as their first language. They speak German. Wine labels are bilingual. Villages have two names. Even the same grape can have two completely different identities. This is not just a wine region. It's a place shaped by history, borders, and constant change. And all of that, the mountains, the climate, the culture, come together in one very specific way. It shapes how wine is grown here. And to understand that, we have to look at the land itself. The Alps and the Dolomites to the north act as a shield, protecting the valleys from cold northern winds. Meanwhile, warm Mediterranean air flows up from Lake Garda, reaching the south. The result is a climate that manages to be both alpine and Mediterranean, sunny and warm during the day, cool and crisp at night. Alto Adige enjoys more than 300 days of sunshine per year. The dramatic temperature swings between day and night, what winemakers call diurnal variation, preserve acidity in the grapes even as they ripen fully under the sun. This is the secret weapon of this region. You get full phenolic ripeness and preserved freshness. In most wine regions, that is a difficult balance to achieve. Here, the geography does the work for you. And the altitude adds another dimension. Vineyards range from around 230 meters above sea level at the valley floor up to over 1,000 meters on the highest slopes. Different altitudes create different microclimates. The area between 300 and 650 meters is generally reserved for Burgundy varietals. Pinot Grigio, Pinot Bianco, Pinot Nero, basically all of the Pinot. Or aromatic grapes like Gewürztraminer and Sauvignon Blanc. Higher altitudes favor grapes that benefit from an even more pronounced thermal swing. The geology is equally varied. Sandy soils on the steep slopes, porphyry and clay, ancient glacial deposits, you name it. Each valley has its own geological fingerprint, which is why the same grape variety can taste dramatically different from one subzone to another. And talking about subzones, let's get into them. Valle Isarco, the northernmost wine-growing district, is the stronghold of white wines in the region, known for steely, mineral-driven expressions of Müller-Thurgau, Sylvaner, Kerner, and Riesling. Valle Venosta, where vines are recently being planted at higher and higher altitudes, produces wines of extraordinary refinement and intensity from its sandy slopes and dramatic thermal swings. The Central Valley, around Bolzano, is home to the indigenous heroes: Lagrein in the Gries Plain, Schiava on the hillsides of Santa Maddalena, Pinot Nero thriving in Mazon and Montagna, and, of course, Gewürztraminer, a grape that many people believe originated near the local village of Termino, or Tramin in German, a king in its home territory. Now, about the valleys being covered in swamps. That's right, for a long time, the valley floors of Alto Adige were actually not suitable for viticulture. They were wet, marshy, and prone to flooding. Even the mountain peaks were too harsh. This is why vines have historically been planted at that sweet middle altitude. Not too low, not too high. The Goldilocks zone of the Alps, if you will. In other words, this is a place where, against all odds, wine can thrive. But that raises an even more interesting question. Because if these conditions make winemaking possible, when did it actually begin? And who were the first people to figure this out? The first evidence of vine cultivation in this region dates to the Bronze Age, specifically between 1800 and 1600 BC. Grape seeds have been found in ancient settlements around Ledro, Merano, and Bolzano. Human beings were growing vines here roughly 3,600 years ago. By the Iron Age, around 500 BC, we have clear archaeological evidence: grape seeds near Bressanone, drinking vessels, dippers, pruning hooks, the whole kit. And the people responsible for this early viticulture were the Rhaetians, a group of Alpine tribes believed to be related to the Etruscans. Cato the Elder, the Roman statesman and writer, even praised Rhaetian wine in his book, De Agricultura, before civilization had even conquered the territory. And in 15 BC, the Romans arrived and absorbed modern-day Alto Adige into the empire. What followed was, by most accounts, the first golden age of winemaking in this region. The Romans combined their own winemaking techniques with the existing Rhaetian tradition, and things flourished. There is one particularly interesting detail here. The Rhaetians had been conserving wine in wooden barrels, a practice that was actually fairly advanced for its time. When the Romans arrived, they were still using clay amphorae, or leather containers. So, in this corner of the Alps, the locals had figured out barrel aging before the Romans had. Now, the Romans did build the Via Claudia Augusta, a military road designed to move legions through the Alp faster. It also served another purpose: transporting wine from south to north, which I would say was much more important. So, by the time the Romans arrived, winemaking was already part of life in this region. But growing wine here has never been straightforward. And over time, people developed specific ways to deal with the challenges of this landscape. One of the most distinctive visual features of Alto Adige viticulture is the pergola, the overhead trellis system where vines are trained to grow horizontally above head height, creating a canopy of leaves and hanging fruit. If you've ever walked through an Alto Adige vineyard, it feels like walking beneath a green ceiling. The pergola was first mentioned in a document in Alto Adige in 1274. That's nearly 750 years ago. For most of that time, the dominant material for the poles was wood, chestnut and acacia specifically, with willow branches used as binding material. Nothing was wasted. Every piece of the farm contributed to the vineyard. But then came industrialization. Starting around 1900, wooden crosspieces were replaced with iron. Around 1920, wooden poles began to give way to cement poles reinforced with iron, though it took until around 1960 to get the mix right for genuine stability. In Castelbello, they still use the old tradition of wooden poles for the pergola instead of iron, and they maintain another ancient practice. Sheep graze the grass between the vines, leaving behind an excellent natural fertilizer. And also, it means that you have a charming workforce. It is one of the most endearing examples of traditional viticulture still in practice today. The pergola system had one significant advantage: yield. It was brilliant at producing large quantities of schiava and lagrime, which was great for a long time, but then, as we'll see, became a serious problem. Today, around 80% of vineyards here in Alto Adige have shifted to the spalliera system, due to a focus more on quality over quantity, easier mechanization, more sustainable practices, but the pergola does endure as a symbol of this region's identity. Now, the pergola is one way to adapt to the conditions here, but it doesn't solve everything, because in many parts of Alto Adige, even water is a challenge. If you visit Val Venosta, the northwestern arm of that Y-shaped valley system, you'll encounter a word that sounds like it belongs in a Tolkien novel: the Val. A Val is an ancient irrigation canal. These canals were constructed to channel water from mountain streams down across the steep slopes, feeding the vineyards and orchards that would otherwise struggle in the dry summers. The engineering involved in building them across rocky, precipitous terrain without modern equipment was genuinely extraordinary. And every Val, even today, has a Valid, a guardian of the water. When the water level exceeds a certain point, a bell notifies the waller, who can then divert it elsewhere to prevent flooding or waste. It's a role that combines the ancient and the practical in a way that is very characteristic of this region. Some of these canals are centuries old and still in use. The ingenuity of the people who built this landscape, not just the vines, but the entire infrastructure to sustain them, is something that deserves far more recognition than it typically receives. So by this point, the foundations were set. The land, the systems, the knowledge needed to make wine here possible. But wine in Alto Adige wasn't just agriculture. It was something worth protecting. And in the next episode, we'll see how people went to extreme lengths to do exactly that.